The level of offense that was in
My
that
mom's voice
sentence
came
was,
out there.
that was so hilarious. I feel like you were gonna ground the play. I was like, you're grounded for forever. You can never be seen.
Go in a corner and think about what you did.
Exactly. What's up, everybody, and welcome to Let's Talk Stories. Today we are talking about Newsies. That's what we're getting into. It's Jaylon's favorite thing to talk about.
I'm so sorry. I am fangirling. I'm very sorry.
So we're gonna get in on that and talk a little bit about that. But before we do, let's do the usuals, the usual check-ins. Well, before I do that, I guess the question I want to ask you guys first is, since you've heard Christian Bale singing, do you feel like that's something that anybody should ever hear, ever?
I've heard worse. I've heard much worse.
I sound worse. So I have
But-
no appreciation for people who have bad singing because I have the worst singing.
Yeah, I don't really feel that way. But the thing for me is like there's a singer, an online singer I really like, who named Caleb Hiles, and I've gotten to talk to him briefly too at a con. And he said something at a panel once where he's like, everyone can sing, just not everyone can do like the professional stuff, but everyone can, and all it is training. So you can train to do it. So I feel like every time I sit down in a musical, I'm like, it's not that they don't know how to sing, it's that no one was telling them precisely how to do it and how to train to do it. But I've heard worse. For example, he is a voice in Disney's Pocahontas, and that little SOB Mel Gibson is in that movie, and he sings terribly. Not Christian Bale, the little SOB I just mentioned. So I've heard worse. I've heard much worse. It's my opinion.
Dude, you're already hating on Christian Bale in the better role he had than Batman.
I'm not
That's don't.
We're jumping right in. We could go down.
hating on Christian Bale or his singing. I hated it, but it's fine. It's totally fine.
You were so nice to me the very first time I ever made you watch it. And then you were like, yeah, I liked it. And you were so nice about it.
I don't hate it. I've said that before. I don't hate it. I'm really in the middle on the whole thing. And when I first saw it, I really liked it. And I was really for it. And then it was one of those things where, like, the longer you get away from it, the more you start to think, okay, why did I like that? What was interesting about it? What did I like? What did I not like? And so I guess just like there was a real high coming out of the movie, and then it was just kind of like, okay, cool. It was a movie I saw.
Fair.
I've seen far worse, and I've seen things that I've hated way more. I'm kidding when I say hate it. I'm being, facetious. But I don't hate it for sure. I don't. We'll talk about it. We'll talk about it. But all that being said, what have you guys been watching? What have you guys been up to since last week? Get us caught up.
I have been listening to a lot of music, and I think I'm back into like listening to Noah Kahn on repeat. So
okay,
Noah Kahn, is that a band?
No. Have you ever heard the song "Call Your Mom" or "Stick Season"? Or okay, I'll send you some of his songs. But he is a folk singer who just writes very raw and honestly about things he's experienced growing up in a small town in New England.
Well, God bless him and anybody who talks about New England. So
yes.
I
Northern
Attitude.
New England. Such a good song.
I was really missing drama stories because I was thinking doing this podcast, I'm like, everyone's got to think like he's such a geek, he's such this like loser geek, I'm actually type because all he talks and I'm like, oh, that's not me because I have all these other interests, all this other stuff, it just doesn't come up. And I was thinking, I was like, man, I really miss that, and I miss reading books more. Like I am drowning in all these books I want to read, which is so sad because I'm such a slow reader. I can read comics and manga like that, but books, I'm so slow. I'm getting better at it, but I'm still so slow. But I was like, I need this. So I watched Detachment, which is a movie from the American History X director. That tells you everything you need to know. It was brutal. I was telling you, Jerry, about this. It's a great movie, but it was brutal. And then I borrowed from the library the Stephen King novella, The Life of Chuck. And I read it, and it was really good. You know what was interesting about that one? This is why I bring this up, is that it felt like Stephen King was doing kind of like a life is beautiful, here's the secret of life story. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. He hasn't really done that to my knowledge. So what's going to be? Read the story, finished the story, enjoyed it. It was really good. And I sat with it for a day and I kept thinking about it. I kept thinking about it. I was like, what was he saying? What was he doing with the story? And I came to this interpretation I hadn't thought of. It was almost like, at least for me, that he wrote this drama story with a little bit of oddness to it because that's the wonder of books. Is it was almost a story that was about there is no grand answer meaning to life, and that's okay, but not in that cynical postmodern way, but more in a you're not responsible for figuring out everything. Your life does not have to be the template for figuring everything out. It can just be, and that's okay. And once I kind of hit that, I was like, dang, that was really good. So it was an interesting experience, but I had to get into some more dramas because I was like, I miss them. I miss the people stories.
Good. Good stuff. My week was sad. My weekend was sadder, but also I did some creative work for the first time in a while. So much creative work that it had me up for a full 24 hours until I was done. So I plotted a novel trilogy and the first novel from beginning to end in its entirety in 24 hours. Then I also realized that I because I was thinking a lot about dark romance and how why women authors specifically, but I think some men too tend to come up with like these smutty books and stuff. And I was like, it's really just it's fantasy fulfillment. It's the idea of I don't have this, or most people don't have this in their real life. So they create something that they can vicariously live through, or they read about something that they can vicariously live through. And I realized that because I was writing a character that was a complete monstrosity of a human being. And I found out that this main character, this story is, I didn't realize it until it was done, that this novel, this first one, is nothing more than a villain origin story. And it's all about this character who starts off kind of a monster, but just kind of truly becomes a monster. But I realized in doing that, when I was realizing how much I really was attached to the character, I realized how much of it was fantasy fulfillment. And this thing of like, your life sucks at the moment and you really wish you could be this. And you could do these kinds of things, but you never will because you're not this kind of person, but you really wish you could be. And this is an opportunity to do it. So I did all of that. I wrote that and was just like emotionally a nub by the end of it all. And so I unwinded on Sunday by first I watched the Temptations miniseries, which was like, I don't know why they call it the miniseries. It's really like a 2-part movie, but whatever. But I watched it and that was kind of sad, but it was also kind of good. And then I watched The Complete Unknown, the Bob Dylan movie.
Was it
And I
worth it?
realized I already knew that I loved Bob Dylan. I've
Yeah.
always loved Bob Dylan.
As a fan, I'm asking from that
Yeah,
perspective.
I've always loved Bob Dylan as a fan. But then I also realized how much I love folk music in general. I really, really like folk music a lot. Folk rock and things like that, and just indie folk. And I just really, really love it. And so I was just kind of going down a rabbit hole of Bob Dylan and folk music last night on Spotify until I passed out. And then this morning I've just been kind of doing the same. So that's pretty much been my entire weekend. I went from, creating monsters to realizing that the world is kind of crazy and it's okay to not be okay as long as you sing about it.
Can I tell you 2 related stories that might make you laugh, Jared?
Yeah,
Specifically to make
yeah,
you laugh?
for sure.
All right, story number 1. I forgot this thing. I was like, I'm really tired. I really want to read this stuff. Hey, look, there is this YouTube channel. They were called Gates of Imagination. Had just an independent audiobook channel. Had just done Jane Austen's Persuasion. I was like, I know all the Jane Austens from the movies and miniseries because of my sister, but I haven't read Jane Austen. I feel so stupid. Let me dip my toe into this. I'll listen to an audiobook. So I put on my phone. I played Jane Austen. I'm falling asleep. I'm like, I'm listening to it and it'll turn off. Wouldn't turn off. So I had like a fever dream night of Jane Austen, which she speaks perfect English, but when you're half asleep and listening to Jane Austen because my phone would not turn off, it was like she was speaking in tongues. It was like I knew it. And so when you said that about falling asleep to Bob Dylan, I was like, I forgot. That was a funny story. Second story. Here's how I know I'm a Bob Dylan fan. High school. Find him. I had was it Rolling Stones magazine or Time magazine about him. I can't remember. Had the whole thing. Grew up my hair, sunglasses, right? The whole thing, which is not even my favorite era of Bob Dylan, but whatever. And I'm doing that. At the time, I got hit by Cupid's arrow for the first time, right? And I'm talking to this girl that I'm like really, really into and yada, yada, yada. Long, horrible story. But I say about Bob Dylan, she says, I don't really like Bob Dylan, and the back of my brain was like, it's a red flag. It's a red flag. And later on, semester, the school year ends, things don't work out, blah, 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 blah. I move on. But ever since then, I'm like, and that was the moment I realized she wasn't the one. She was like, I take Bob. And I joke, if you don't like Bob Dylan, whatever. But it was just like, it was funny. I remember my teenage brain going,
If you don't like Bob Dylan, though,
something's wrong.
it's not fine. Don't listen to Charles. It's not fine. It's horrible. There's something
I
wrong
just
with you.
vented my own personal life for your
Thank you.
laughter. I feel very
Thank you.
silly, but I'm glad. Hopefully you find that funny.
I do. But yeah, Bob Dylan is king. And if you don't agree, then there's something wrong with you, and you should probably seek medical help and have your ears checked at the very least. 'Cause I don't know. I think you're partially deaf. I think to everything else. You're not deaf to anything else, but you're deaf to that, and there lies the problem. So yeah, I also wrote a manifesto. It was very small, but I did write a manifesto about writing. I shared it on our Substack about why I create and my anti-mediocrity stance on people creating stories that say nothing and my inability to tolerate it. I had to do it, so I did it.
As you should.
Thank you. All that being said, let's talk about Newsies. Let's get into it. Let's dive into it. So the first question I have for you guys, what was your first memory watching Newsies? And when you did see it, were you just like, I'm in on this, or were you like, eh? And we'll start with the person who is literally jumping out of their seat to talk about it. Sheila, let us know. I'm so happy for you because you finally get one.
I know.
We've all had our things, and now you get to get yours. So this is Jaylon's episode.
I had to ruin Superman for you guys because I watched it without the childhood, like, oh, I love this so much. And now this is the movie that, like, I've known since childhood. And so it's so close to my heart. And now I get to be the one to be excited.
Now we get to ruin it for you. Oh,
objective. Yeah, exactly. So my first memory, my mom had recorded it on a VHS tape when it had played on TV. So we had my honorary aunt over who was like our best friend, and she heard that we had not watched Newsies yet. And so she said, can I please be the one to introduce them? So we had a movie night, watched Newsies, and I was so on that high that the next morning I remember vividly the energy that was coursing through my veins thinking about this story.
Okay. Charles, what about you?
So my experience with it is not charming, unfortunately. Though it's not interesting. There was an old film dude on YouTube who used to be really popular and I respected in my youthful ignorance, who later turned out to be a, shall we say, privileged Gen Xer of business and other issues that we shan't get into here. He did a review of it, never heard of the movie before. He didn't like it. And it was always kind of in the back of my head. I was like, oh, okay, whatever. But I never heard of it before. You're like, you gotta watch it. I was like,
that's exactly what I sound like too.
I love musicals. I'll put a musical on my list for my new films of this year. So turned it on and didn't enjoy it, but not in a really bad way. But as I think I told you guys, however, it did click something in my head. So I'm in this weird place that's like, did you like it? I'm like, no, it didn't really click with me, didn't really work. And I get why people like it, totally. I totally get it. It just didn't really click for me. But it did one little tiny thing. And I'm like, that's good.
It was the movie you needed, not the movie you wanted.
That's what I
said. Yeah, kind of, because I was
Charles.
reading the new article, the new angry article, and I was like, where exactly does this kind of come from? And I was like, on the Newsies. And it was so
darn Jaylon.
Yeah, it was an interesting detail, and it kind of tied back to what I said, that you can have something really meaningful come out of something that doesn't work, which I think is the most like marvelous thing. Because like, I don't know if it still goes on, but when I was a teenager and social media was like going on crack cocaine. Everyone was about perfectionism. Everything was about perfectionism. Blah blah blah. Everything has to be perfect. Everything has to be perfect. Blah blah. It's not perfect. No 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 no. And it was suffocating. It was suffocating. And I've learned that that's not true. And I think news is a really interesting example where it's like you can. For me, I didn't think it was really all that great. I thought it was. Its heart was definitely in the right place. That I applaud it. Like there's not a lot of movies that have a heart in the right place today like this one. There's a lot of goodness to it, but as a whole, I was like, there's a lot of critiques I have, but it still did something in my brain, and that's really special. So thank you for that. Is what I'm trying to say.
I'm sorry, and also you're welcome.
Now there's no sorry. If you had recommended me Rent, then we would have had a problem. But we will cycle back to that in a second.
Myself, I had never heard of the movie
Until
ever.
I indoctrinated you.
Yeah. I hadn't heard of the movie. I hadn't heard of was it Broadway? I guess it was.
Yeah, it was Broadway.
Whatever. Yeah, I hadn't
To
heard any of that.
clarify, we are talking about the
The
Disney
movie.
film, not the Broadway.
Right. And so the first time I think I had ever heard of it was during a editing session thing that Jaylon was editing something of mine, and she made a reference to it. And that was like the first time I had ever heard of it. And she made a good point for what she was arguing for. Not good enough for me to watch the movie, but it was good enough for me to be like, okay, cool. I get what you're saying. But it just kept coming up again and again and again.
Because I am like that.
And so when we did the podcast and we started creating a watch list, it was mandatory that it became a part of the list. But I had watched it before it became part of the list. I had watched it because I had promised her that I would watch it. And so I had two outings with this film. The first time I saw the first half of it, and then I had to turn it off because at the time I believe I was supposed to be watching Wicked with my wife. And so I had to turn it off to put on Wicked. Honestly, now that I think about it, I probably should have finished watching Newsies instead of Wicked because Wicked sucks. Anyway.
That is an opinion.
Yes, it is. It is. It's
There's
a very strong
lot of
one.
opinions going on here.
Yeah, I hate it. I hate that movie. I love, and there are things I love, there's things I like, there are things I dislike, and there are things I hate. And I hate Wicked. But that's fine. We'll talk about it whenever hopefully we never watch it. But if we have to, we'll talk about it and I'll explain. But for now, I ended up watching it again later. When I had the chance. And at the time of watching it, I liked it a lot. I liked it a lot because I think it resonated a lot with what was going on in my life at the moment. And a lot of the things that I was trying to accomplish, things I'm still trying to accomplish, but things that at the moment I felt really, really low about achieving. And seeing that movie was really, really helpful. And sort of that rousing moment of like, get up and keep going type of thing. And so it was for that, it was really, really fun. It was fun. It was a fun movie. But yeah, that's where I'll leave it for now. Also, I don't hate them. I dislike musicals. Everybody knows I dislike musicals. I don't dislike them completely. I'm just not the biggest fan. You will never see me running out to go and see a musical for myself. If somebody's like, let's go see this, or I really want to see this, I'll watch it with them. However, all that to say, one of my favorite and I would say in my top 10 favorite movies of all time, one of which is Across the Universe, which is by far my favorite musical ever.
Not that. I need to see this movie. I saw this trailer in the theater and I said, that looks kind of cool. I was a preteen, I think, and then it never happened, and I thought I made up this trailer, and it's been sitting in the back of my brain. So you just reminded me.
Yes, you need to see it.
I think Across the Universe.
I think you all need to see it. If you like the Beatles,
yes,
you will love it. Even if you don't like the Beatles, you will still love it because it's really, really, really good. It is the only musical that I can think of off the top of my head that I could watch multiple times over and over and over again and believe it. Also, because I kind of feel like everybody in that movie is on LSD, which somehow makes people randomly singing makes a lot of sense to me. So, but yeah, it wouldn't be a Beatles movie if people weren't, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds.
Never liked that Beatles song though.
I don't either, but
I
love the fact that it stands for LSD, and that's why I've always loved it. So, but that being said, Jaylon, did Christian Bale make you feel any weird emotions that you didn't understand as a child? Because I just saw him. He made me feel weird emotions as an adult
You
that I
need to
didn't understand.
clarify this. You really need to clarify this.
Right. Okay. Okay. Fair enough. I can see how that came out. Sorry about that. Uh,
Try again.
On the scale of I have no opinion when you were a young person to The Little Mermaid, oh, Eric, run away with you? Why? This is also sudden. Where do you rank? That's what he's asking.
okay. So I guess what I'm ultimately saying is, was it Christian Bale that drew you to the movie?
It was 1,000% the character of Jack Kelly, because I've never been one to keep up with celebrities. I had this weird thing where, like, if I watched a movie that I was really in love with, I would look up the actors and everything else they've been in, and that's how I got my the very limited education I have on pop culture and celebrities. However, I did not have any appreciation for just the status of celebrity. So I didn't even know who Christian Bale was at the time that I watched it. I had no idea who the actors were. And it was years later that I found out that Kenny Ortega choreographed it, which is why it was so exciting in a way, like the childhood nostalgia that High School Musical was. But I just really appreciated the character of Jack Kelly. I really appreciated the David versus Goliath story. I just liked the personality of all the Newsies. They made them all so distinct while still being cohesive as a team. And I really appreciated, there was something about, I've referenced the song Santa Fe several times, but I have been at the point in my life where I was singing for myself, trapped where there ain't no future, even at 17. So there was something about that yearning that I really understood and related to, especially at that young age that he was in the film.
I kept thinking about Patrick Bateman. And so I kept thinking,
I'm trying
what if
so hard. I've been trying so hard not to make an
I had to?
American Psycho reference this entire time. So thank you for increasing the struggle.
But I really did kept thinking about it, and I kept thinking, and so like when I rewatched it, I was like, I just kept seeing it in my mind as Patrick Bateman in a musical doing musical stuff, trying to sell papers, and I was like, this is kind of hilarious, and it makes enjoying watching this movie so much more enjoyable. Because like, what if he just like killed everybody at the prison? I mean, at the little boys like home thing, and that's how he like. Yeah, and I was like, what if he just murdered everybody? That'd be hilarious. I mean, that's terrible, but it would also be hilarious. But I'm very hit or miss with Christian Bale because there are some things that he's done that I really, really like, and I think, oh, he's awesome. I mean, obviously, I love his Batman stuff. Not a big fan. I wasn't a big fan of Dark Knight Rises, but I did like The Dark Knight, and I did like Batman Begins. I gained a bigger appreciation for the Batman Begins later in life than I did when it first came out. Because when it first came out, I was kind of like, this is good, but whatever. Let's get to the good stuff. But as I've gotten older and I've rewatched it, I'm like, oh no, this is actually a pretty good damn movie. So I've loved that movie. What was the other one? I want to say Prestige is the one that I'm thinking. With him and Hugh Jackman. Yeah. So I like that one. Obviously American Psycho, I've enjoyed. But then just, I don't know. I think it's one of those things where you like sometimes you let who the art. We talked about this last week about like separating the artist from the art thing. And so when you hear all this stuff about Christian Bale, stuff that I've heard about Christian Bale in the past and all of that, it always made me feel like, oh, he's kind of shitty and I don't really know if I like him. Obviously, this was when he was younger, so this was before he got into his shittiness, unless he was just like a shitty teenager and nobody knows about that. But overall, I found him. I liked the other dude better. The older brother, I forget his name. Yeah, I liked him better. I'm trying to think of. I've been racking my brain. I don't know why I didn't just go to Wikipedia. I've been trying to figure out like where I know him from in other things because he looks so familiar to me, but I can't put my finger on like where I know him from.
Yeah, most of the kids in this movie, I'm like, are you from Hook? Are you from Hook? That was kind of my theory because of the time period and stuff. So I understand what you mean.
It might have been though. It's totally a possibility. But yeah, so that was my thoughts with Christian Bale. To me, I felt like he was kind of a stereotypical, and this kind of goes into the other thing of, is Jack Kelly actually a good leader, or was he just a charismatic runaway? And he really, really reminded me of like in that time period how you always had like those movies of like the run of where like teenagers are the focal point, and then you always have that one leader that's kind of like not really a good leader, but for some reason they were just elected to be the leader. It happens in Hook 2 with what's his name?
Rufio.
Rufio, yeah, sorry. Rufio, who in my opinion is not necessarily a good leader, but is ultimately elected to be. And so it always happens when you have these stories of like teenage kids that are or little kids that are like on their own and they elect one of their own to be the leader. And obviously, I guess as a child, you don't really have the discernment necessary to determine what makes a good leader out of a person. You just pick the person who's loudest and or who's willing to say the stuff that nobody else is willing to say. And I guess that's kind of what Jack does. Jack is really just willing to do and say all the things that everybody else is like, no, we shouldn't do that. And Jack's like, yeah, let's burn it down type shit. And so, but I wonder, did you guys see him as a good leader, or was it just like, no, he's just a charismatic little cult leader? They were a cult. I don't care what anyone, they were totally a cult. I don't
Right.
care. But what did you guys think?
I will say for me, I don't really have a lot of strong opinions on that because to me, this movie starts with, or sort of starts with whatever, Walt Disney Pictures presents. It is an early 90s children's film. This is a fairy tale. This is all lovey, hot chicken noodle soup when you're sick movie, which is fine. That's totally fine. But I can't really regard it in a more grounded, realistic tone. But for me, I've seen a million. By the way, it was so weird. Whoever designed costume Christian Bale, little did they know he looks exactly like Booker DeWitt in Bioshock Infinite. So every time I was watching this movie, I'm like, oh, that's what Bioshock Infinite, an adaptation, could look like, because I love that video game. Well, the other reason is that that character was a Pinkerton, so it was kind of related. That's why. Anyway, but I've seen a million Jack Kelly types, so it doesn't really impress me. I heard something I really appreciate about this movie that I think is a credit to him as a character. Both I appreciate it both for drama, telling the drama, and I appreciate it thematically. That when they increased the newspaper prices, I was like, okay, we're gonna be here for like 5 minutes debating, should we strike, should we not? And I appreciate it a lot. And he just goes, nah, F that, and starts it immediately, which I thought was both A, refreshing for both the drama, because we, get to the good stuff faster, but also I appreciate thematically that instead of having this going, I don't know, let's go to social media and debate on Facebook, he's like, no, no, it's wrong. We know it's wrong, period. And I like that. And to be honest, I do have a real soft spot for the Aladdin style orphan types. Like when he was the Sound of Face song was actually the only song I actually kind of liked in this whole movie. We'll get to that in a second. But I actually kind of he steals the horse though. Musicals are so weird. I was watching this movie and I'm like, stop muddying or stop littering the streets with a bunch of props the theater kids can get a hold of. But he steals a horse in this number. So weird. And I love it. It's so ridiculous and I love it. But I liked even that detail of him being jealous for having a family, that he's going down the fire escape. Like he can't be up there. He's got to go down to where he belongs. So I have a soft spot for that. But yeah, I think it's interesting to talk about charisma because I'm trying not to make this the socialist revolution episode, but it's coming. But it is interesting in that sense that like I actually think it is important that he is charismatic because I was having my conversation with my sister before. I was like, and maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like in today's world, you have the normal people who are so mousy and so quiet and, oh, that's such a shame. I better go on Twitter and go say how bad things are. And on the other side, you have these white men going, blah, 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 screaming all the time. And I was thinking about this watching this movie that it actually is really meaningful that there is a guy who looks out for his fellow bros and goes, no, let's get angry, let's get loud and go and move. And he's as loud as everyone else. And I was like, wish we had that today. So I actually enjoyed that. It's not like the most special thing in the world, but it was interesting that a movie from I think it was 92, it said.
I think so.
Thank you. Still had that tang that related to the modern day. Again, I'll try to be nice and calm and not make this the socialist revolution episode, but I promise.
Well, before Jaylon says what she's gonna say about Jack and all that, I will say this. One thing that I didn't realize it had me until it had me was the Jack and Sarah subplot. Because I was like, when Jack was leaving and he was like, and they like at the end, and they're like, Jack's riding off in the sunset and he's gonna go to Santa Fe and all that. And I was like, he's just gonna leave Sarah? How dare him just leave Sarah? And then we came back around the thing, and I was like, yeah. And I was just like, I was like, justice. But so that the love, the little small romantic subplot, because it's not a huge part of the movie, but it's like it's not so important to the movie that like if you took it out, you would notice a major difference. But it was still, it really did
Is the cherry on
get
top.
me. I really enjoyed that part of it. I also kind of like the bromance between Davy and Jack and their little brother. Who I really like the little brother a lot.
Les was amazing.
Little brother was actually really adorable. I was like, okay, we got a little brother here. But then he was just like doing these things. I was like, I like you, kid.
Yep. I think that I will say I don't believe Jack was a good leader because for the reasons that you listed, Jared, like kids don't know how to elect a good leader. They choose the person who is the flashiest, the most charismatic, the loudest, which Jack was. And they really drove that point home by showing that he only led the strike using Davy's words. He just had the guts to put them across. But Davy was the one who was actually thinking through things and coming up with their direction and their mission. And then Jack was just loud and charismatic enough and gutsy enough to put him across. The idea of sometimes you don't need a mature leader because sometimes the way children look at the world is so much better than the way adults complicate the world and the way adults try and the greed is different when you're an adult and you learn capitalism and you get sucked into the dog eats dog world. You fight your wars and you become that really jaded personality that has to look out for themselves. And in this story, that's what Jack almost falls into because he realizes that if he doesn't look out for himself, he's going to end up destitute. So that's when he did take the bribe and almost turned his back on his friends. I love the line where he's like, I guess I can't be something I ain't. And they're like, what, a scab? And he's like, no, smart.
I did appreciate that line.
I think it just
I
goes to
saw it
show.
coming, but in the best way.
Yeah, yep. I think it just goes to show that sometimes you really just need the faith and the perspective of a child who isn't tarnished by our greedy world to be able to make things right. When your belief isn't ruined by a world that has just crushed you under its foot again and again and again, you're like Les, where you just believe that anything can happen and you believe that you can be the change that makes the world a better place. And you're not, debating, well, do we actually want to get beat up? Do we actually want to go against this huge power? So those are different threads that I saw in the movie that felt very realistic to me that I appreciated.
Okay. I here's the thing I think is interesting too, because this movie, now that I'm really thinking about it, and I'm really like, now that we're having this conversation, that's one of the reasons why I like having these conversations, because you start to think about stuff. But it's like that movie, it really is, it's really timely for right now, because as we have this kind of anti-billionaire mentality, this very eat the rich thing is very common right now. And so this very rebellious nature. And when Jaylon talks about how do we elect our leaders when we're children, is we usually select like the louder, more charismatic person. But then if you really think about it, I don't think that ever really changes. Because not to get too political, but I mean, take a look at who's the president of the United States right now. And regardless of what you think about who he is and what he's done, he's loud and he's charismatic. And that's exactly why he won. In fact, going back probably to, I would not that far back, but going back down to maybe Obama, we've always elected kind of the charismatic, brash leader to lead us. I think Bush Jr. wasn't very charismatic compared to others, but I mean, even he was a little bit more charismatic than the alternative. So was Bill Clinton, and that's just in America. That's not including other places. But like in the U.S., yeah, we have a tendency of electing the charismatic person who will do the things that we wish we could do, or say the things. But even more than that, I think it's kind of interesting that in this whole left versus right thing, look at how we treat influencers. specifically activist influencers. Activist influencers, we usually elect individuals who are loud and boisterous, who aren't necessarily the ones who should be leading a revolution. If you really look at these people and break them down and what the qualities of a person who should be leading a revolution should be, they don't exactly have them, but they are loud and they say what needs to be said and they do the things that everybody else is afraid to say. And I think that it's just, I find it interesting that we say that, oh, children don't have the discernment to do it, but I think that just never changes. I think that's less about youth and more about humanity. I think humans will always, going back to cave painting times, we've always elected the bigger, stronger, bolder, louder person to be the one who goes out and kills shit for us and does stuff for us, and because we trust them to do it, even though they may not necessarily be the right one. But it's always why I've liked characters like Frank Underwood from House of Cards, or what's his name, Littlefinger from Game of Thrones, or even just those are the ones I'll name for now. Or Thrawn is another example of people that are not necessarily the biggest, strongest, or loudest, but they're the smartest. And so I don't know. I find it an interesting conversation when you start to think about characters like Davy versus Jack, in the sense that Davy probably would have been the better leader for them. David was the smart one, and he knew we can't act on emotion and we can't just do whatever we want whenever we want. We have to be smart about how we're doing this. And Jack was like, fuck all of that. Let's just let's kick over the barrels and drown the town. I don't give a shit. And so I think the weird thing is, if I had seen this movie as a kid, I think I would have really, really liked Jack a lot. But as an adult, I realized that I don't like Jack and I prefer David.
An interesting note, if I may interject. You mentioned cave paintings, and another way to contrast Jack and Davy is Davy is the artist in our world, the ones who are writing these words in ink and creating the banner that unites us all, that we can all unite under. And then the loud, charismatic people that we elect to lead us, there is a chance that they will get behind those banners and put the words out for us. But as artists, we're really the world changers. So the words that we write have so much responsibility and so much power. We have to make sure we know how to use that well.
I agree. Sorry. I also realize now where I know David from, and I don't know why I didn't know it before. David was the kid who Tom Hanks grows up to be in Big. So, which I love that movie, Big. I like Big.
I haven't seen that movie in a long time, but
I haven't in a long time
been in my
either.
head forever.
I haven't seen it in a long time, but to this day, I cannot walk past one of those giant floor keyboards in a toy store without thinking of that movie and wanting to. I will never do it because me jumping around on anything is a bad idea. But beyond that, I always think of that. But yeah, so that's who that is. But yes, you make a good point. You make a good point about artists and all of that. Question then, do you feel like the story holds up after all these years? We just kind of said that it's timely, but do you feel like the story itself still holds up, or do you feel like it's kind of one giant plot hole?
This is where I'm going to have a very subjective opinion, so I need your objective opinions to come in here, because for me, I'm going to say yes, it holds up, because it still means something so deep to me, and it still inspires me on almost a daily level with how often I think of these songs. Also, because it is the Newsboys strike being the start of a child labor law reform in New York. It was actually a real historical event.
Right.
So Kid Blink was actually the leader in history. Jack Kelly was, a fictional character, so they could do whatever they wanted with him. I appreciate historical fiction because I think that there is a timely story there, since we've established history repeats itself. So anything that has happened in the past is going to happen again, or is happening again, because humans have a really hard time learning their lesson.
I will say I'm of two minds about it, because on one hand, it is what it is. I personally didn't think it was really all that good a movie for interesting film reasons that maybe we'll get around to. Because they're interesting. There is an inherent flaw in this movie for me that is a code for something good, which this will make sense in a little bit. Sorry. But again, yeah, if we just kind of all unite, well, take down the guy. Like, they're still orphans. It's still 1899, New York City, yada,
New
yada,
York
yada.
City.
Like, it's a children's film. It's an all ages film. It's a little fairy tale. You move on. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't say anything, period. I heard, this being said, there aren't a lot of 90s all ages movies that are about something a little bit more serious. In fact, actually, kind of something that popped in my head. I think the only thing, which is interesting because it also comes from the Disney Corporation, the only other off the top of my head, I know there's going to be a bunch of people that disagree with me, and that's fine. Or not disagree, but like, no, it's this, 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 and thank you for informing me. I feel the only other Disney movie that, or thing for all ages of this period was going to be about 10, 13-ish years later with Holes, of actually saying something a little bit more important. Because I swear, like, most live action 90s all ages movies, I swear were like Free Willy. It was like little boy and a dog, little boy and a whale, little boy and a gorilla, little boy and a panda, little boy and a different kind of dog, little boy and a different kind of dog. And that was kind of it. This is kind of like what I said about the V for Vendetta movie. It's baby's first socialist revolution. That's kind of important. That's kind of a good thing. Whether or not it is realistic, I don't think is the point. It's meant for kids to start thinking and turning those wheels and not regurgitate what they see on TV. Yes, because this is technically on TV after theater releases and yada, 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 but a different kind of TV at the very least. And so, in that sense, I think it is kind of timely because it is having, like I said, having the attitude of just saying no and being united in saying no, I think is really meaningful because something I think is a really issue here in the modern world is the people who are saying no are not united together. It's like everyone wants to be the Superman of the revolution, but you can't have that. So everyone, it doesn't feel like we're all in a giant consensus here. Everyone has like different ranging opinions on all these different very serious issues. Instead, we could just say together, no, that is wrong. That is injustice. That is hurting people. It must be stopped together. That's in this movie. And that's pretty cool. And honestly, even then, there is actually a little bit more strategy that I do like. They got to go unite with the Irish dock kids.
Brooklyn.
Yeah, Brooklyn. Oh, don't say Brooklyn. God, it's like this. We'll move on. We'll get to that. If we get to the filmmaking
Emma,
element, we will.
Brooklyn is here.
Stop it! Stop it! Stop it! I see that. Personal taste.
I have too much power.
But I do like that. And I do like that they have to kind of work together and they are thinking about strategies. I think it could have been pretty simple to just make the movie a giant protest fight, protest fight, protest fight. And instead, they are having rallies and they are trying to. The very conversation of spreading the news and who gets to say the news and gathering allies feels a lot like now conversations, just in the digital medium rather than physical medium. So I thought that was really nice. And that's why I was saying is I didn't really enjoy the film. I didn't think it was all that great, but I think having your heart in the right place really does go farther than you'd think. Because if this movie was just about teen rebellion youth or something like that, I don't think it's interesting. But I think it is trying to actually say something a little bit more important. So because it has something a little more important, it has a little more substance to last, even through someone who's criticizing it. So I think it is a little bit more timely. Put it this way, it's lasted.
Yes.
So thusly, versus like, and I think that's important because to my understanding, this wasn't really well received, didn't make a
No.
lot of money. So yeah, so basically it kind of faded away versus like, for example, I think the oldest one we talked about on this podcast is Superman. Well, Superman's a big old huge character. That's a big whole film. Of course it lasts because WB is going to make sure you know it lasts. I mean, I love it, but like, even if I didn't, they're going to make you know. Newsies, no one cares about it. So the fact that we are talking about it right now because people did without a corporation saying so, I think that says it right there.
I'll say this. I have a few things. First of all, Spot. I love Spot.
Yes.
He's my favorite character in the whole movie, and I feel like J-Lon had a crush on him. Sorry for that side stray bullet you just caught there. But
I can neither confirm nor deny.
But that's a side point. The other thing is, I think it's kind of interesting when you look into the history of like Kid Blink, which is very interesting. It's interesting that he was accused of like accepting bribes, and like kind of betraying the whole strike, which is kind of hilarious in the grand scheme of things. But and also that he was the right hand to a mobster later on in life before he died, which is also kind of hilarious. And not just hilarious, but it's also pretty fucking cool because then it makes me think about Jack as like, oh, whoa, Jack was a little bit more interesting than I thought. But yeah, overall, my objectively, Jaylon said we had to be objective. So objectively, I will say that I think that this movie does in fact stand the test of time for similar reasons to the way that Charles was talking. I think another really cool thing about this movie, touching on a little bit what Charles was talking about, is it's one of those things where like it tells children you can see all the injustices in the world and you can do something about it if you want to. And it being more of a kids movie, it's a really good message to have. It was a great message to have in the 90s when things were crazy. I think it's a great time to have it now when things are crazy. And so but it's like as a kid, you see all these problems in the world and you think, well, those are problems that adults will deal with, climate change or, women's rights, civil rights, LGBTQ, all of those rights. These all seem like big people problems, things that they'll have to deal with so that one day I won't have to deal with it. Or I wish that they would deal with it, but they're not because they're too busy fighting about this, and this. But that movie and watching that movie, it's one of those things where it's kind of like you can do something about it now. But at least I feel like as a kid, I would have imagined that it would have stirred something in me to want to do that. Now, granted, when I was a kid in 1992, I was 5. So I can almost guarantee you I wasn't worried about any of the problems in the world. But I think that had I been maybe a little bit older, and maybe I'd seen some of the stuff that was going on. I mean, I knew what was going on in my neighborhood. I knew what was going on around us. And my neighborhood was crazy. Lots of violence, lots of drugs, lots of stuff that just shouldn't have been there. And so my thought process was always like, I was safe because my mom would, protect me. And this was before my dad and mom got divorced. So it was my dad would protect me or my big brother would protect me. But they were all big people problems, things that I didn't need to worry about. And so I imagine that if I saw something like this, it would have been a little bit inspiring. The same way that you get inspired by watching Superman jump off of whatever to go save someone. And so you run around your house with your red towel around your neck or your sheet. The same idea of like the way Superman made you believe you can jump in front of a train and stop it from hitting somebody. I believe that a story like this could make a little kid feel like I could say something about the big people problems out there and people might just listen. I think the other interesting thing that Charles mentioned in this as well is the whole everybody wants to be the leader thing. And because of that, nothing ever gets done. I think that the key to solving most of the problems, especially in the United States right now, is the recognition that if we could just start with basic human decency, just start there and ask the question of, does this treat these individuals like a basic, simple human being? And if the answer is no, then we collectively should do something about it. And if the answer is yes, then we can move on to the next thing. So most of the stuff that we have so much problems with in our society right now, whether that be racism, whether that be homophobia, transphobia, whether it be the dissolving of women's bodily autonomy, all of these types of things, these are things that in essence, if we just stopped and said, are we treating these people like human beings? And most of the time, the answer is no. That's the weird thing. Most of the time, the answer is no, we're not doing that. And if we could just start there, that's an interesting thing that I think could solve a lot of problems. And I think in this movie is a very similar thing in the sense that the kids didn't want an excessive amount of things. They weren't asking for anything
It was a
unreasonable.
basic thing.
Right. It was a
To the degree,
simple,
maybe
is what I'm saying, that even the idea of me telling you that, treating people like a human being, that's the bare minimum. That is the bare minimum. If I treat you like you're a human being, like just a human who has the right to breathe and live like I do, that's bare minimum. We should do so much more for people than that, but that's the bare minimum. And at the end of the day, these kids were just asking for the bare minimum. And you had the rich people that were like, hell no, that's, how dare you ask for the bare minimum? But like, I just think that seeing a movie like this today, it does stand the test of time. We'll find out in another few decades. But for now, I think that it's still relevant. I think it's still useful. I think it still holds up. And I think more people should watch it for that alone, objectively. If you could get over all of the random singing and you can get over Christian Bale as a human to really, no, I'm just kidding. But you literally can. I think that it's something that everybody should see today. And I honestly feel like it should be remade today.
I have thoughts about that. I was getting around to that.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. But yes, tell me, what are your thoughts?
Okay, so here's the deal, and I mean this, in a good way. And Jalen, I'm so sorry that I'm not over the moon for this movie. I feel so
No,
bad.
you're good.
I did want to because I know what that's like.
I want to hear the objective perspective because again, like subjectively, this was something I grew up with that was really close to my heart. And in my opinion, this is kind of getting off topic from what you were going to say, but going back to what Jared was saying, I liked this movie and it empowered me as a child. I was quite the political activist when I was a child. And I was like getting all my friends to come over to my house and have these parties where we like address letters and call state representatives and everything to fight against a case that was really close to my heart because my family almost experienced it, which was medical kidnapping. So I was very much a political activist when I was a child, and this movie made me believe that I could do that I could make a difference. And then I kind of burned myself out from that and just kind of laid down as an older teenager, and accepted that the world was just going to be a terrible place and there was nothing I could do about it. And in that state of apathy, this movie still reminds me that even with no power, even with impossible odds, you can be a normal kid with not even the bare minimum, and you can still make a difference, which was, in my mind, more powerful than Superman, who did have power and could make a difference. So, in my opinion, that's why this movie is so encouraging for me. It hypes me up so much. But objectively, from a story perspective, I want to hear your thoughts.
So to that end, because I do have connections there, here's my thing. And this is going to make Jared have a very interesting reaction. I don't think this should have been a musical. And everyone goes, "What? But I thought you loved musical." Here's the thing: musicals. I thought you never could. There were certain stories you couldn't do musicals of. And then the American Psycho musical came out, and I went, "Okay, free game, free roam. Everyone do whatever." And it's proven. I've seen that there's these ideas, these stories. You're like, you can't make a musical out of that, and then people find a way to do it. It's amazing. This is not one of them. And the reason I say that, first of all, just I did not like these songs. I did. Honestly, I felt there was some weird sound mixing in this movie. I could barely understand. Not just the accents. I felt like the volume was too loud. There was something really weird about this mix. Like I had to turn, like my TV was up and I could not discern. It was just really loud. And I felt the film has kind of not great pacing. So I was like kind of grating on my nerves after a time. But I don't like the songs. They didn't work for me. They weren't fun, interesting, memorable. And by the way, I am sorry to the two High School Musical people here. I don't get the cult for Kenny Ortega. I don't. Because I'm watching this movie and then everyone stops and they all do this little twirl thing, that like side twirl thing, like a figure skater. And I'm like, well, it's a Kenny Ortega movie because we had to stop and have everyone go like this. And I just find his choreography to be boring. It's very pedestrian. It feels like something you'd find in high school. And I did terrible high school theater. So I know what I'm talking about. So that drove me nuts. But the thing is that I felt, and furthermore, the one song where they're in like the diner and they're singing about the newspaper thing,
King and
not a
New
good song. Yeah, not a good song. And these Brooklyn Bronx accents do not help. Like, that one character in American Tail, Fievel's friend with the Brooklyn accent. It's like that on crack. I tried. I really tried. It's just a taste thing. I can't deal with it.
That's fair.
But I'm listening to this song, and then I'm like, oh, there's your textbook case. That song could have been cut. It does not advance the plot. It does not tell me anything. It's not likable. It doesn't work. But here's what I'm trying to get at. The way the film was played out, it didn't convince me that it needed to be a musical to tell its story. But the other thing is, this is one of those cases, in my personal taste and opinion, this is a case where the songs make it soft. It makes it very like melty ice cream soft. It doesn't have a kick like you would think it is. It's one of these cases where people stopping around and singing makes no sense. For me, mostly just because it doesn't convince me to be a musical. But the reason I bring it up is I was imagining this movie not as a musical. And I started thinking this could have had much more of an edge. It could have had much more if they didn't have to waste so much time and energy making these uninspired choreographed bits and jumping off of weird things like theater kids in the streets and stuff. You could have dove more into the grit in the story because I thought the grit actually worked. And it reminded me of West Side Story. So the original West Side Story movie, I don't like it. I can make the brown face argument. I don't need to. It's boring. It doesn't work. It's not interesting for me. Everyone goes, it's like the Family Guy thing. How could you say it? But the West Side Story movie, it's a perfect movie. Yeah, they say that. It's not good. But the West Side Story remake that Spielberg did, I friggin' love. But one of the reasons I do love that movie is that it felt like it had the punch. Because you can't be talking about this white gang and this Latino gang cutting each other and fighting each other and people dying in the streets and then having just this tone deaf tone. The movie, the remake, didn't have that tone deaf attitude. It feels like it has something to say. It feels meaningful. The grit in the story matches the grit in the filmmaking. So I think this movie would honestly benefit from a remake. Personally, I don't like the songs, so that's my personal taste. It'd be interesting if there wasn't songs. But I think it'd be interesting if you did have a little bit less of that early 90s simplicity, I guess is the term we'll say, and allow the story to breathe and have more grit. Because you have like child labor. This is child labor for the Lord's sake.
Mm.
And child prisons and a kid's missing his eye and more hardcore things. I think it'd be really, really moving if the story could be told again and let it, for my opinion, sprint with the grit that's in the story. And I thought that was a really interesting case where it's like watching the movie, I was thinking like, I see it. I see what they're doing, but there was like this Kenny Ortega musical lens that was covering the viewer. So I think a remake would be interesting because we could strip away some of that kind of Disney Pictures present, the old narrator from the 90s, that kind of voice,
Yeah.
and make it with a little bit more punch that I think is in the story. So it was an interesting experience watching that.
This is an interesting conversation about taste too, because in my opinion, I really loved the songs and I felt like the songs contributed to the symbolism of unity because even in the face of all the grit and all the real, I can respect what you're saying about like, let the hard stuff feel hard. Stop trying to pad it. Stop trying to make it palatable. I can totally respect that. And so it makes me interested to see a remake without it being a musical. But I did like the symbolism of there's unity in everyone singing the same tune. Also, again, this is more of a childlike, this is very much like it was made for children. Adults can enjoy it, but it was made for children. But having that childlike hope in the face of such horrible circumstances is also something that's very powerful, in my opinion.
I agree with myself that it should be remade. However, I also agree that I would strip the music from it as well. But less because I didn't like the music. That's my thing. When it comes to musicals, there are some musicals where I love every single song is a freaking banger and it's great. That's rare for me. It's rare for me. Most of the time, it's like, okay, there are a few that I will go back to. For instance, this is less about, technically it's a musical, but it's also kind of a Disney movie cartoon, whatever. But like Moana, right? Specifically, Moana 2. Moana 2 only had like maybe one song, I think, that I really, really, really was like, I need to go back and play that and listen to it again, and even when I'm not watching the movie. But then you have stuff like Hamilton, where it's like, or Across the Universe, where it's like every single song is a banger. So this one, they weren't all bangers for me, but I really wasn't paying attention to the singing of it all anyway. It kind of felt more disruptive to me than it did supportive. I also really hate the idea of true stories being made into musicals. It's almost like trying to make darker things more palatable. So, you know what I mean? Like, it's like maybe we could stomach it more, or maybe we could deal with some of the darkness of it all if we sing about it. Hamilton is one of the. It's not easy to do. That's the thing. It's not easy to turn a serious, dramatic, real life event into a musical thing. It's not an easy thing to do. The Hamilton managed to do that really, really well because it managed to take stuff that was really serious. It's pretty much told an entire story over the course of this music, which is what a good musical should do. Things like Tick Tick Boom, which although I also did not care for Rent, I did enjoy Tick Tick Boom, which is basically just the autobiographical story of the person who made Rent and while he was working on Rent. And it's about his life. But the movie Tick Tick Boom with Andrew Garfield, I love that movie so much. And the music is so good in that. But that was also one of those rare moments of like you can take real life events and then turn it into like a musical thing. Cause I always feel it's weird because it's like if I'm gonna take this event seriously, this moment in time seriously, these dark moments in people's lives, I find it really weird that like in the moment of him telling everyone about how like he was brutally stabbed and but when he went to prison that he bust out in a song and started talking about how one day he would be free. That just makes no sense to me. That's not a real thing that happened. I'm just saying like for an example, like it just doesn't feel right to me. It feels kind of off. So this being a true story and then it being a musical, I do understand because it's for kids, so you're trying to make it a little more easier to digest and easier to get behind. And so you make these sing-along type songs that you could sing along to and, dance around your living room and feel like, oh, it's cool. This is how revolutions just started, dancing on top of carts and throwing newspapers around. And that feels that way. But overall, I don't know. I would get rid of that element. I think that the overall story would work just fine. There's still some. That's another thing. Charles was right too about pacing. That was the one thing that I noticed about this movie is it felt like it just dragged on in a lot of spots for me, where I was just like, okay, they could have wrapped that scene up a little bit faster. They could have, that we didn't need to sit with them that long about this, that, and the other. So it was just like, I don't know. I've always found pacing to be a really weird thing. And I've said that it's one of the things that I struggle with grasping and dealing with and explaining to people. Pacing is difficult. For me, I've always just established pacing as if I feel like a moment was either too rushed or it was taking too long, the pacing is off. Pacing is one of those things where you have to feel it. You have to feel your way through it. So this was a movie where it was like, okay, I feel like this movie could have been an easy hour and a half. And been, that'd be the end of it. We could have still got most of the beats that we needed, and felt good about the story. This movie was a full on 2 hours. It was just like, yeah, nah, it didn't need to be.
I was gonna say, I think it's interesting to say that because I think what's interesting about musicals that I feel isn't talked about enough is that there's different styles of musical. So I think for me personally, I don't like that this movie has them dancing because it didn't feel like a dancing kind of musical where it's like shoom, shapa, kind of an attitude. I think it needed something a little bit more punch and quick and aggressive and singing a little bit less about like, oh boy, it's a hard knock life, man. I think it needed to be a little, guys, you pissant, kind of more of an attitude. And I think if it was that, I think that's kind of what you're saying is more like the tone, which I think is a fascinating detail. But that's my musical head detail.
I feel like that's a directorial choice that was made. The director and the writers, they decided that that's what they wanted to do. And as I'm never going to shit on a director or a writer as much as I can avoid it. If that's the choice you make artistically, cool. But yeah, it's just interesting thing that they made that choice. Because I did feel that way too with the dancing and all of that. I felt like that's the other thing, and maybe that's my beef with musicals. I don't have a problem with people singing and just singing. That's fine. But like, if we are walking down the street together and we're talking and then suddenly something you say inspires a song in me, then all of a sudden I'm swinging around a lamp pole and I'm jumping on somebody's car and I'm doing all this other crazy shit. Now I'm like, okay, bro, like it would be hilarious if someone just ran out and was like, that's my car. And it's just like, because it's just like realistically speaking, who does that? If I was walking down the street and I just saw somebody randomly start singing and jump up on a car and I'm calling the police. You're going to jail. It's happening.
But when there's a musical
in this movie,
that
people go to jail.
convince you that's amazing, I think that's what makes it special, where it's like you're not turning on a lamppost just because it's in theater and they're dancing on the car because they're there. You can give a reason why in the choreography of why the character's on top of the car. It's so good.
Yeah, that would be good. That's good. Make it make sense.
Weird example, even though it's not really a musical to me, it's more like a movie with songs. Oliver and Company with Dodger on top of the cars. But he's a dog. Yeah, I know. But in the context of it, it feels like
made sense,
going,
yeah.
I can do whatever I want, everyone. And that makes it fit. Versus It's a musical. Let's go on top of the cars, children. Come now. It's fascinating.
Shaylon, have you ever seen Oliver and Company?
It's on my list.
You
Oh
haven't
my
seen
god,
Oliver
It's
and
on my
Company?
list.
you have to see it.
Dude,
Oh, that movie is
yeah,
so
it
freaking
is
good. I
not
love
like
that
my
movie so
favorite
much.
Disney movie, but there's certain things in that movie that have lasted in my life.
Yeah, mine too. I won't, like I said, I agree. I wouldn't say it's my absolute favorite top Disney movie,
It's not even
but
like
it's up
top of
there.
the list for
It's
me
up there.
either.
For me, it's up there.
But yeah, which is odd to say. This is why I find musicals so fascinating, is that they are so multifaceted. And things work and don't work, and do work and don't work, and stuff like that. But Jaylana, have you seen the stage musical of Newsies?
Yes, I have.
How does it compare?
Okay, so again, this is going to be a very subjective opinion.
That's fine.
They tried to, because I guess one of the main complaints from all the critics was that Sarah and Jack's relationship wasn't developed enough. And they
I
thought
agree,
Sarah was
because
a flat character.
he kisses her, and I'm like, boo. I'm like, that's just another. The guy has to kiss
I
the
liked it
girl.
till they can.
So,
I
again-
thought Davey had the other his friend. I thought they had way more chemistry.
So again,
that's
to
my-
me, like this was something where I watched it when I was a child, and I was just so excited to see a movie that wasn't about the romance. They gave the romance as the cherry on top, and they didn't like make you sit through all of the ins and outs of a romantic relationship, because that wasn't my mindset when I was that age.
Yeah.
I was like, so in my mind, I didn't mind that. The Broadway musical did change a lot of things, and I personally did not appreciate it. I did not like how they changed the characters. I felt like it didn't make sense for some of the ways that they acted, and I still felt like the romance wasn't good. I was like, I liked it better when I had less information about it. So,
I'm sorry, that was
did-
funny. Sorry. I can't get over it. I'm sorry, but I can't get over the I did not appreciate it. It's just the level of offense that was in
my
that
mom voice
sentence
came
was,
out there.
was so hilarious. I feel like you were gonna ground the play. I was like, you're grounded for forever. You can never be seen.
Go in a corner and think about what you did.
Exactly.
Yeah, I did not like it personally. I know that a lot of people did, so I'm not going to say that it was bad or worse than the movie, because again, all of this is very much a taste thing. And I'm not going to say that your taste is wrong because you didn't appreciate this. I think there's very good reasons to appreciate and very good reasons not to. Did find it fascinating that the play tried to be a little bit more historically accurate with how the strike was settled. But other than that, I didn't find anything to appreciate in it that I didn't appreciate more in the movie.
That's very interesting.
That's surprising. Sorry, I'm just doing my little side research on the thing, but like the dude who wrote this movie also wrote or had a hand in writing Tarzan,
Oh, the Disney one?
the Tarzan Disney movie.
Interesting.
Which I liked. I loved the Tarzan Disney movie.
Oh, yeah.
So it's also up there. This is some of my favorite. I find that my favorite Disney movies don't involve princesses.
So why'd you
Because-
give me such a hard time about not liking Disney princesses?
That's fair. That's fair.
I think that was me.
She just
actually. I was
called
teasing
me
you.
out.
I think I was teasing you. That was
Listen,
it.
I don't think that I don't. I mean, you should know. I feel like you should know Disney princesses and should acknowledge their existence.
Oh, I do.
To be fair, I was just never exposed to the Disney princess movies as much. So, like, you know, except for like Little Mermaid. Well, I guess I guess there was a lot that I was, because I had like Little Mermaid, I had Beauty and the Beast, and then some of the more modern ones, like not really modern now, but Mulan and Princess and the Frog. That was pretty much, you know, pretty much it. Like, I didn't really get to see what is that one with about Rapunzel?
Tangled. That one
Tangled.
was good.
Yeah, I never saw that
Okay.
one. I never got a chance to see. I never saw the old ones like Snow White or Cinderella or any of those. I don't think I was interested in it as a kid, because I was just like, when I was a kid, my thought was like, I only want to watch stuff that I could be. So like, I couldn't wear a dress. I mean, I could. In fact,
It is.
there's
fine.
there's photo evidence of me doing so.
I need this.
So, no, you will never see it. But I will, if you ever want to possibly hear the stories, if you ever meet my brother, ask him about Jaretta, and he will tell you all of the stories of me in a dress and high heels and all the things that he did when he was babysitting me. So-
Older siblings are the worst, aren't they?
They are. So, but overall, like, that was my thing. If I couldn't be it, I didn't really want to watch it. And so I had no interest in falling in love with a prince or going to a ball, or that stuff seemed silly to me. So I was just like, whatever. But Mulan and all those other things, those things seemed kind of cool, because Mulan was kind of, Mulan was cool. And as I got older, Tiana was cool because, she wanted to be an entrepreneur, which was really, really cool for me. I thought that was really cool. More so, I thought it was cool that a woman was doing it because it wasn't really a thing that you see a whole lot of. I didn't see growing up. So overall, yeah, I never really had a chance to see it. And it's funny because I never came across this movie either. I would think that I would have seen it even at like the video store. I literally never knew it existed until Jaylon said something about it. And so it's weird. I'm kicking myself for not knowing it. I do, however, have an extensive knowledge of, early 2000s Disney movies, the ones that aren't necessarily in the vault, that might just be in the dumpster, like Brink and Smart House and all of the other things that people,
Smart House.
Johnny Tsunami and all of that, where I loved those movies so much. They were so bad, but they were so good. But yeah, this movie was something. It was something for sure. Question I have though is, what's the thing in this movie that Disney would never do today?
Everything. Oh,
You want us to narrow it down?
Everybody in this movie would have been black if it was today. I'm just kidding, but it's kind of true. It is kind of true. They either would have been black or diverse in some way if they made it today. I could promise you that.
Every day, it's been, I don't know many months, but ever since November, every day, commercial, TV, Moana 2, Moana 2, Moana 2, the movie I didn't want, the sequel I didn't want, the sequel I didn't care for, Moana 2. God, I hate this company so much.
Disney's
okay,
weird.
Anyway, just
really
having, honestly, this kind of movie doesn't get made anymore. Not that it can't, it can be made, but you have a Disney corporation. They just don't allow all ages movies like this to exist, especially in live action, where you have sets and you have dancing and it's original musical and yada yada yada. They don't allow it. And I think the resolution could potentially be manipulated in today's world, because I think the Disney Corporation would try to moral high ground the resolution. There is something important I have to say about the climax of this movie, but I don't want to get into it this very second. It is very important. But no, Disney doesn't give a crap about this stuff. The corporations don't give a crap about this stuff. They give a crap about how you can be docile. And then there's those rare movies, those little movies that come out that are released that are allow you to do more and think more, because I do think there's great stuff honestly being made, legit mainstream indie or otherwise. But this kind of movie Disney would not make today because they don't care about you, and they don't care about your entertainment, and they don't care about anything other than Coco 2. Gosh dang it, Coco 2. I assume you heard that news.
No, I haven't.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. Disney tried to literally copyright the Day of the Dead, when Coco came out. Need I say more?
Oh, gosh.
My rantings of this company that I know far too much about.
I agree with you, though.
What's your take, Jaylon? I'm sorry. I'm trying. This is supposed to be your episode. I'm trying not to run you over. I apologize.
No, I want you guys to watch it. That's all I wanted. I feel like the big corporation itself that's profiting off of the misery of everyone else is not going to give you the secret to how to defeat them.
Yeah. And not that this movie does either, but at least it wasn't trying to pretend one way or another per se.
Yeah.
So
I don't know, man. I think I agree that Disney will not make this movie today. I agree with that. I think the reason for it is a little less conspiracy theorist and it's more business minded. This type of movie would never sell today. Yeah. It just wouldn't. People wouldn't pay for it because we're so when it comes to Disney specifically, we are so obsessed with escapism, and we're obsessed with Marvel, and we're obsessed with Star Wars, and being as far away from universes that look like ours as we can possibly get, which is why things like Daredevil, Born Again is not working for me anyway. I won't say it's not working at all, but it's not working for me because Disney either does one of two things. Disney will either be completely unrealistic for the sake of escapism and trying to deliver on that, or they'll become almost pedantic and just overly do it and hit you in the head with point after point after point. Not to say that, oh, Disney's too woke, because I hate that. One, I hate that expression because I'm tired of people stealing that.
They did steal it. Thank you.
That belonged to the African American community.
They did.
And they just stole it and co-opted it and made it into like this thing where they just kind of started applying it to. It's kind of funny, and I'm sorry I have to go on this small rant, but it's just kind of funny how white people stole a term from black people and then used it to disrespect black people. I think it's hilarious because now whenever somebody's like, "Oh, it's woke," it either means it's a black person, it's someone who's gay, or it's a woman. Those are generally speaking what those are the term generally means. And I just think it's hilarious that like you stole a thing that we used as African Americans to ultimately talk about being aware of the system and how it operates, and that the game that they are playing, we need to be able to play it just as well, got somehow co-opted into a thing where it was like we hate anything that's different than white people being the center of the conversation. That's ultimately what it got co-opted into. All that's to say, I will not call Disney woke. I will say that Disney has a tendency, though, of sometimes trying to be relatable to what's going on in the world to the point where they become preachy about it, where they don't seem to know how to walk that line of like, we can send a message and we can talk about things that are happening in the world, but we don't have to make it to the point where it's like, this is a one-to-one recreation of life. And not only is it a one-to-one creation of life, but it's also wrong, and you need to know that it's wrong, and every character is going to tell you that it's wrong, and anybody that doesn't think that it's wrong is a villain in the story. And if you, for some reason, align yourself with the villain in the story, you're a horrible person. That's ultimately, you either get that with Disney, or you get, it's not in this world, it's completely out of this world, and it's, and it's whatever. This story right here, Newsies, is way, way, way too in the middle of all of that, because even if you did keep it as a musical, even if you did all of that, it's still, to an extent, yes, Jaylon's right in the sense that it does kind of give you the blueprint on how to defeat the conglomerate, but it's also just a little too real for the Disney audience. And as much as we hate Disney for being a corporation, I feel like we kind of have to hate ourselves, because they only do it because we let them.
I
At
don't
the end
know.
of the day, not you, but
I am blameless.
no,
I
no.
did not do this.
I am too because I pirate movies. So I mean, uh, but for those of us who spend money on Disney Plus subscriptions and go out and buy movies and do those kinds of things, or pay for Hulu, technically, we encourage Disney to create crap that will get them paid. And until we decide this is not quality story, we want real story, they will never do that. It'll just never happen. I mean, I think that's kind of the case for not just Disney, it's the case for WB, that's the case for many of the video game studios that exist right now, is they live off of these microtransactions and all these other things purely because we are willing to pay for it. And if you learn anything from the Newsies movie, if you stop doing the thing, they will stop doing the things they're doing. So stop buying it and they will stop, and they will start making shit for you. Once you show them, we won't pay for your stupid ass, microtransactions, and we won't go and watch your movie. We won't pay $18 for your movie that talks about nothing, that makes no sense. And we won't buy the subscriptions. In fact, we will all collectively cancel our subscriptions to Disney Plus, because until you start putting quality content on there for us to watch. But until that happens, Disney's just going to be like, nope, they're willing to spend all their money on us, so fuck it. But we'll keep on giving them trash because we don't have to try. Sorry, that I will get off of my soapbox now. But I do think Newsies does prove the point that you can learn the power does belong to the little guy. It is one of the points of Newsies. The power belongs to the little guy, which makes it completely acceptable that the main characters are, in fact, children. So, yeah, I think that's pretty great. Now, Charles, before we jump into the lightning round, I want you to state your thought on the climax.
Okay, so this is what I think is really interesting. If you put a gun to my head, I'd give this movie a 2.5 out of 5. That seems really harsh, seems really low. It's just really long. Didn't entertain me. Didn't work for me. It was really loud. Though I really think it was the mix. Something was off in this mix. I don't know. Maybe it's my TV. I don't know. Something was whack. Didn't really work for me. But the whole thing about this movie, yeah. It turns out to be a whole Disney thing. It's all crowd and cool protest against the band's building. Yeah. Fine, whatever. But the whole point of the ending of this movie, have them say, we will create our own newspaper and we will unite and we will throw our hat into the ring, instead of being out the streets screaming at the wall, hit me really hard. Because I said, that was really good. That was really smart. Then the next day, I was catching up on Andor, right? And yes, by the way, I know Disney Plus, totally true. It comes to my self-service, okay? I'm paying for the cell service. It's some weird package thing. Okay. And if I could pirate, I would, but it comes with my cell service. Okay. That's why. So that's it. And when I can get a better phone that doesn't have that, then we'll all be fine and dandy. And then we'll start taking money more away from the corporation. I know. I understand the hypocrisy. You can't walk the line without slipping. I understand this. Anyway, but I was rewatching it, and the episode of Nobody's Listening, I started thinking, I was like, you know what's really funny is nobody's listening to us. Yeah. You know, the CIA and the FBI can come cracking down on anyone they want because they're the Sardaukar. However, never let anyone remember that the Sardaukar lost against the Fremen in Dune. Keep that in mind. But they can stop us whenever they want. But for now, we can pirate anything we want because no one's listening. We can write anti-government, anti-anything we want because of freedom of speech. You're cute, kid. No, because they don't care. They don't listen to us. Nobody's listening. So as long as we can play within their barriers, I was thinking about this, we can pull ourselves up together, and then before they know it, we can break through the wall. And that started thinking because of Newsies and them making the newspaper. Because I realized, I was like, that's a missing message. That's maybe a missing ingredient. All we're doing is we're complaining online and making our little protests against Target and Amazon, etc. But barring people who need to work at these jobs and need groceries and stuff because they just have to live. The world is complicated. There are exceptions. There are complexities. I understand that. I do not deny it. I am part of that subject. But I was realizing, I'm like, we could have our own newspaper. What if we had, like, the Washington Post got bought out by one of these oligarchs. So you can't trust the Washington Post. I was like, if we could have like a Substack newspaper, we can get people to think and to hear and to be educated and to say no. And I started thinking that if we could all have like a symbol, a phrase, a something that everyone could agree on, and we say, you know, you're putting children in prison. Phrase. No, we deny this. We reject it. It's bad. You're doing this. You're doing that. This person, that person. No, we reject it. It's bad. If you can have that symbol, that organization, then maybe you can do something. Because I realized you have to have power. A newspaper, a news organization, some kind of group, some kind of thing could be powerful instead of all just running around with our little separate groups. And I started really thinking about this. I literally sat down on my couch and I was just like, you know, miming smoking a pipe, like really thinking about all of this. And I started thinking about what I need to do with my own job and et cetera, and finding work in activism, et cetera, et cetera. And all of that came from Newsies, of that central point of they can't just run around with chickens with their heads cut off. They have to play the game that they can play it themselves. And I was like, that's weird. There was a movie that I was like, doesn't really work with me. But that one bit really clicked in my head. And I was like, huh, that's something. So thank you, Jalen. So that
It was the
something.
movie you needed, not the movie you want. I still, every single time I watch that scene where they said, no one's coming, no one's listening. We wrote all these things, we wrote our hearts out, and no one cares. And then suddenly everyone else joins in the song. That's something that to me is so powerful because you never know who's listening. And there is power in your words. There's power in what you immortalize in paper and ink. Metaphorically nowadays because it's the internet. But regardless, there's power in that.
I wonder. Okay, I say this because I'm going to be the Debbie Downer of the whole thing, but I'm not just going to be. I'm not going to be the Debbie Downer. It's just something that I have to say because I've been thinking about it a lot. I do think that there's a positive to what I'm about to say, but there's also a negative. The negative side of this is, as a country specifically, I think that there's a lot of talk about we need to start a revolution. We need to revolt. We need to do, we need to rise up and stop this kind of this madness that's happening. And, people are like, I've heard this a lot. I hear it on TikTok. I hear it on Instagram. I hear it all over social media. People are like, in the 1700s, they rose up against the government and they did blah, 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 blah. And I was like, there's a lot of things I could say. One, you owned my ancestors at that time, so I'm not really interested in
So
anything you have to say. Yeah, so I'm not gonna. Let's not get excited about that. But
what is it? George Carlin once said that this is about slave owners who fought to be free.
Exactly. But even if we lived in an imaginary world where we can dismiss the idea that slavery existed and you guys were like terrible, not you guys, but like this country was terrible. But even if that was the case, understand that at that time we were a nation of like 13 states. right? It wasn't a lot of people. You know, you understand that all of Europe can fit in the United States. The entire like it takes you can go from the UK to France in like 3 hours, right? It takes 5 hours to get from New Jersey to Boston. Okay, so when you start talking about like and then we look at like oh to go from Chicago to Los Angeles is like just driving is like 4 days. So when you think about that, that's just us getting to each other, let alone us communicating with each other. We live in a society where our government does, in fact, listen to what we have to say. More than that, if we were to be like, let's rise up against the government, one, they would figure that out so fast.
Super
On
quick.
top of that, even if they did it, even if we were cool enough to figure out a system that was under the radar and we were able to do that, what do you call them? Those people that live in the wilderness that are like off grid people that are just like I'm trying to think of the word.
My people.
No, not
No
you,
people.
Jaylon. You're not one of these people.
You're not crazy.
You're not one of the crazy ones. But no, the ones that like train
Listen.
like their lives to you might be crazy, I don't know. But you but like the ones that live off the grid that train for like the world to end and they're they have lots of guns and they're doing all sorts of crazy stuff. Even if we were to get all of them together and get them to protect us and build a little army, we'd still be going up against the military. We'd still have to deal with special forces and all of that. And even
and
if
a
we
lot
outnumbered
of
them,
children would be killed.
yes. And even if we
Yeah,
had all of the guns that we needed and we had all of the weapons, the biggest issue that we have more than all of that, let's say best case scenario, we figured out it all. We finally figured out how to get guns, to get the training we needed. We figured out how to communicate without the government listening. We still don't fucking like each other. And at the very end of the day, the fact of the matter is we can't even figure out how to get along about whether or not a man who believes that they are a woman is a woman or a man. People are tripped up off of the idea of pronouns, and you think that you have the ability to start a revolution. You don't. You absolutely don't. You will be dead. It's just, oh, you will either die or the people you love will die, or immediately you will be in some sort of camp. It's just going to happen. That's just how it's going to go. And then on top of that, people just don't care enough. It's easy to be like, I care on social media. When you're talking to yourself on your phone, it's easy to be like, I give a shit. I want this. I want to stand up against the government. I want to fight.
and some
But then
people
when the
can't afford to either.
right, I agree with that. But when the chips are down and people have guns and people are blowing people up and people are willing to bust in your house, drag you away, and put you in a cage, when that's the case, nobody wants that. It's like that expression, everybody wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to die. That's what it is. I say all of that. That's the negative. That's the Debbie Downer side. The positive side, though, is I do believe that this ideology works so well in publishing and filmmaking and in music because the idea of these big corporations, these gatekeepers who continuously tell us that this is the story you have to have. We make the stuff, you buy the stuff, there is no in between. But then you have the little guy that's like, I'm going to go and put my music on SoundCloud. Or I'm going to go and put my music on Spotify. Or I'm going to make this short film and I'm going to put it on YouTube. Or I'm going to put it on Vimeo. Or I'm going to write this book and I'm going to put it on Amazon, oddly enough, the corporation. But I'm going to put my own books out there and I'm going to tell the stories I want. And I'm going to collectively get with other people who are making things. And we're going to collectively make stuff and put stuff out there so that millions of people can see it. And within that, you create a revolution. See, I do believe revolutions are possible. And I believe that the revolution in the creative world is very much possible. In fact, I believe we are heading for one right now in the space of film. I think that film is very quickly, rapidly approaching a renaissance and a revolution against the big media. I was telling Charles about this before, about why I kind of slightly hope that Superman fails. I don't want it to because I love Superman and I would never wish anything bad on Superman ever. But I also kind of want it to flop terribly and WB to kind of go to the way of Sony Pictures and just kind of and have everybody else just kind of like start making things and making it happen. I don't know. That's a long way around me saying that I agree with Charles about how this movie does spark the idea that you can do it yourself because nobody's paying attention. Nobody's paying attention to the little guy. That's what's most interesting. Like specifically, Hollywood does not give a shit about the indie filmmaker because for some reason they believe that we as consumers will go to the theater every single week and we will buy and we will buy and we will buy. And although the numbers are saying otherwise, they seem to keep giving a shit. That's not to say that they haven't been doing pretty well with movies as of late. They've been doing okay, but not good enough for us to be like, oh, this isn't to say that Hollywood is going anywhere. Hollywood will always exist. But I do think that the little guy is going to have a much bigger voice than they have for a very long time. And that's not just in film, that's in publishing. I think that's also in music. The internet has leveled the playing field for everything, and it will continue to do so. It's kind of the reason why I think the same thing I would say about AI, except I think AI is kind of getting rid of the talent level of things, but that's okay. Cream always rises to the top, regardless. So that's the long. This wasn't supposed to become our Revolution podcast episode, but it
I'll
did.
make it. I'm mad if you'll allow me, boss.
I think we can split this one into two. So the second half can be your optional, your after hours.
Jaylon's always trying to save you guys with this whole splitting the podcast thing. It's never going to happen. So you guys just going to have to deal with it. You're going to listen to all of it. Take your medicine. I'm sorry. Charles, please.
Oh, well, I was going to say something. It was interesting that I actually did have this thought a couple months ago about where everyone always goes, oh, the Revolutionary War, the United States, the Revolutionary War. And I was like, first of all, you do not understand the social economic complexities of said time period, let alone war strategies. Go read a book. But more importantly, I did really think about that. I'm like, that happened 200 plus years ago. They literally didn't have a machine gun then. So you can, we got to do this, we got to do that. I'm like, well, technically the war that you're talking about literally didn't have walkie-talkies, in terms of technology and socioeconomic realities and etc. So maybe that's not necessarily the best way to go about as a reference. But what I do find really interesting that does tie into Newsies is that, for example, they go, yeah, let's tear apart the newspaper plays. Yay, it's fun, ripping apart, blah, blah. Doesn't get anything done. Doesn't change anything. And it's an interesting point because I think I made this reference before, but one of the best pieces of Doctor Who is during Peter Capaldi's era when he was the character of this anti-war speech, and it's fantastic. And if I've repeated this before, bear with me. One of the things I love in that powerful, brilliant scene is him saying, when you get everything right, what happens next? What is your plan? And I'm always thinking about that when people say, well, we have to have a revolution. And I'm like, you haven't, as he says in that speech, you have no idea who is going to get hurt and who is going to die and what children are going to get killed. So I'm always weary of that, but you also have this idea of like, okay, but what are you going to do? Like, what are you going to do? I think it's really interesting is, on the other hand, and you'll probably remember this from 2020. Remember in 2020, everyone was protesting and throwing trash cans into Italian pizza store windows. Do the right thing reference there. Thank you. And there were all those people going, well, Martin Luther King didn't do this. And I'm like, but first of all, shush. Second of all, the history is that, first of all, Martin Luther King did not do everything by himself. It was not him at Selma and then a bunch of people behind him who are nameless. Not true in the slightest. But what's more important about that fact is that if you do look at the history of the civil rights movement from the 50s and 60s and the 70s, etc., is it was a war. It really was a war, and people really did die. However, it wasn't that wonderful Star Wars blow up the Death Star war. It was something much more complex, and they used different resources and different ways of fighting that didn't have to do with just mow down the enemy and, let God sort them out kind of an attitude. And I bring that up to say is that I do think it's really interesting that in Newsies, there isn't, to reference another musical, there isn't a Les Mis moment of like barricade or something. They do have to use their brains to try and find a way around it, and then they do win. So what I'm trying to say is you can revolt, but you don't have to just do it with guns. And perhaps, if not probably, violence is not the answer because it's not lasting. So what I'm trying to say is think just a little bit longer, and I think there will be a good side out of all of this. I'm sorry, boss. I'm just very angry at a lot of things.
It's all good.
So
I think it's good. I think it's important to have these conversations. I think Jaylon wanted us to watch this movie, and she knew what she was getting into.
Oh, I did. I fully knew.
Any film that talks about rebels and people rebelling and striking out against larger forces is going to breed conversations where you have... We were just talking about this on that live we did on YouTube, where we were talking about the whole idea of trends and how the time that we're living in often sets the pace for the kind of stuff that's going on. I think what's interesting is, if I recall correctly, I could be wrong, but the riots in LA were in 1992 as well, right?
Cannot remember the specific date right now, but I'm pretty sure you're right.
Yeah, 1982. Knowing the amount of time it takes to make a movie, was already in. Ironically enough, this movie came out April 10th, and the LA riots happened April 29th. So,
So
but
it's Newsies' fault. That's the connection.
everybody went to the movies and was like, "Fuck it." Damn
It
you,
wasn't
Disney.
Twin
No,
Peaks.
that's why Disney won't make it
the original
today.
run of Twin Peaks' ending, that cliffhanger ending that did it. It was Newsies.
That's why Disney won't make these movies anymore, because they know what happened in LA. But no, the idea is that what happened in the LA riots, although it was months and months and months and months and maybe even years leading up to that LA riot, the stuff that was happening during that time inspired other stories. But we were talking about, like Divergent and like Hunger Games, but then you look at where we were as a country, as a planet, during those types of things, and what was going on in society and how it inspired stories. 1984, A Brave New World, Animal Farm. The times where these books and these stories came out were always around times where we were in the midst of, or not long before, some sort of revolutionary time period. And so I think Newsies was around that time as well. I do believe that the next phase, and I will say this now on the podcast so you can quote me later, but like, I do believe that the next phase in literature, once dark romance runs out and runs its course and women and men get over the whole smut obsession, I think they'll never get over it. But
No, it's just become more acceptable. The obsession has not changed. It has just become more mainstream.
right. So what I'm thinking is, when that's over, I think when the smut books go the route of vampires and the way they did with Twilight and all of that, which they will do, because that's the way the cycle of literature goes. When it goes, I do think the next one will be dystopia. Again, dystopia or revolution stories, I think, are going to be the next wave of things, because when you look at the way society is right now, especially in the US, I think people are desperately clinging to the idea of rebelling against the government, rebelling against society, wanting to change things, feeling disillusioned. Disillusioned societies breed the best art, but usually it is something of the realm of rebellion. And we are definitely a disillusioned country right now. Nobody believes in the American dream anymore. I wouldn't
Because
say
you have to
nobody.
be asleep to believe it, as George
Yes.
Carlin once said years
True.
ago. But
Sure.
I'm not trying to say like everything's been bad. What I'm saying is it's okay. Move on. Wasn't there.
Yeah.
Find something new. Find
We've all
something.
woken up to the American nightmare, is what it is. And now we live in it. That's where we live. We live in the American nightmare. And I believe wholeheartedly that one day it will change. And I do believe that it will change for the better. I have to believe that, because if I don't, I will die. But for now, it's a little fucked. And I think that story is all we have to kind of keep us from blowing our brains out, I think, most
Keep
of
us
the time.
having that good heart, like Charles.
For sure. We need heroes, which is why it's good that Disney does exist, even if they do make their corporate cookie cutter content. I think that sometimes corporate cookie cutter content in the space of escapism is a good thing in a world where everything is a nightmare. So yeah, that's my thought. Now, lightning round. Let's hop on that so we can let you guys go. First of all, Elon, have you ever seen the movie Matilda?
I have.
Okay, good. Just needed to ask. So first one, would you guys rather lead a strike with Jack Kelly, or would you rather live as a lost boy in the world of Peter Pan?
Lost
Ooh.
Boy.
Lost boy for
question.
myself as well.
Yeah. Honestly, that's the easier option. I know the moral high ground is lead a strike.
Is it though?
Well,
Is it?
okay, fair.
Is it the easier option in the world where Captain Hook lives?
You shouldn't have asked the girl. I'm teasing.
I don't know though. The more I think about it, Captain Hook's kind of a piece of shit. And I mean, he had a reason, but he was kind of scary. And if you really think, like, they make him seem like he's, funny and goofy or whatever, but like, he literally killed kids. So, I mean, I don't know if I'd want to be a lost boy, because if I get caught, I'm murdered. I'd rather go to the little group home than get murdered by the pirates. And Peter Pan has proven multiple times that he is not very good at protecting his lost boys. And then I guess we would also have to ask the question of which Peter Pan are we talking about? Are we talking about the Disney Peter Pan, or are we talking about the book Peter Pan, where it's arguable that Peter was, walking the lost boys once they got too old into the woods and they never came back type of stuff. Because Peter Pan's kind of a sociopath, but that's fine.
This isn't lightning round. We're
I'm
really
sorry. I'm
dissecting
sorry.
this.
Got a little philosophical. I apologize.
Now I'm just depressed. Thanks.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Disney. It's Disney's fault. No, it's mine. I admit it. All right. So, all right. Here we go. Would you rather work for Pulitzer or live with Trunchbull? Huh? What?
Nothing. Go ahead.
Did you just shit on my pronunciation? I feel like you did. And Charles just sat back. Like, Charles is just like, I'm not going to say anything. I'm surprised Charles didn't say it because Charles is always getting on me about how I should pronounce it. He's like,
No,
said that wrong.
Save your own hide so we don't end up in a situation like.
He saw this coming.
I prefer mispronunciations because they make me laugh. They're amusing to me, so I'll leave it at that.
Listen, I just totally had I'm just calling it the Tom Holland, Jake Gyllenhaal moment where they were having. Did you guys ever see that bloopers for Spider-Man Far From Home? There's the bloopers where like they're supposed to be having this cover and they can't stop laughing. And then when Tom Holland does get it right for the first time, Jake Gyllenhaal just laughs in his face. And Tom Holland is like, you literally laughed at my performance. And I was just like, it's like, wow, okay, cool. Okay, anyway.
Sure.
But yeah, the boss from Newsies, or no, I'm not saying it now. Or the Trunchbull from Matilda.
The other dude is paying me.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
At least I have
I'll-
really cool friends. If
I'll
I
sell
work
my
with
soul if you're
Newsies.
paying me. Fair enough. I will agree. Okay. Most underrated Disney live action movie of the 90s.
Newsies.
That's not fair.
Yes, it is. It's the only one I've seen.
Damn, now I have to do research because I have to make sure that the movies I'm thinking are actually.
I'm drawing a blank on a lot of 90s live action Disney films right now, but I did recently see The Rocketeer that I know everyone loves. That was a blast. That was a really fun movie that everyone's like, oh, it's such a cult movie. It's so great. It's really good. But I'm drawing a blank on everyone. So I'm going to go to the one that pops in my brain. I don't necessarily know if it's the most underrated because I know there is a cult following with it. But George of the Jungle.
Good one.
That movie is, I've recently had it on and it is still really funny and really silly and I love it.
Okay, I have two. I can't decide between the two, but it would be Cool Runnings or Mighty Ducks.
Oh, Cool Runnings was good though.
I mean, out of the two of them, I would have to say Cool Runnings is probably the most underrated.
I love how I did an article about Newsies and Cool Runnings in one article.
I cannot remember what it is, and I think it was in the 90s. Hang on, I have to look this up. It was a Disney dark comedy about fat camp. What was it?
Shit, I know the one you're talking about.
You know what I'm talking about.
I know what you're talking about. The one with Ben Stiller.
Heavyweights. Heavyweights.
Yeah. Oh man, that movie was good.
Hilarious.
I love that movie. That movie's funny. I just saw that recently, like a few years ago. Like in the last couple of years, I've seen that movie again. But yeah, it's good. Yesterday, I watched One Love, the Bob Marley movie, which is so good. Such a good movie, especially considering the dude that played Bob Marley did such a fucking peak Jamaican accent and he's British, but it was just so badass. But the whole time I'm watching the movie, in the back of my mind, all I keep thinking is feel the rhythm, feel the rhythm.
It's Bob.
Sign detail, by the way. Here's an interesting detail. That Bob Marley, different Bob. That Bob Marley movie, no one is talking about this in times. When it came out, it wasn't meant to make money, wasn't meant to get attention. It was just a throwaway biopic movie and blah, blah, blah. And the critics didn't like it or thought it was okay or whatever, right? Move on. It actually was #1 at the box office and everyone went, what are you talking about? People went to see that technically. And everyone went, I don't understand. How could they not see this? Why would they do? So about your comment about revolution in the arts, it can happen.
It can.
And the fact that it was about Bob Marley makes it even better.
Facts.
Drop that down.
I agree. That movie's so good though. We also got to put Cool Runnings on the list because I would love to talk about that movie. I have such a history with that movie. So yeah. Okay. Best rise up and fight anthem in a movie that doesn't particularly just have to be Disney, even though mine is kind of Disney.
You guys really should not have seen the way I got myself out of like basically falling asleep on my feet yesterday to stress cleaning and getting all the things done because I turned on the Newsies soundtrack.
Every answer is going to be
Listen, that I am allowed. This is my episode. This is the one movie I got to indoctrinate you guys with from my childhood.
Fair enough.
I cannot think of anything right now. The only thing that keeps popping in my head is the Andor Season 2 trailer song, The Revolution Starts Now, because I'm just in love with that. I'm just in love with that right now. Adding that to a Star Wars trailer. It was so different and so perfect and so in tune to the rebellious spirit of it, and thematically worked, and just means a lot to me right now.
This is just the first one that popped in my head, and that's got to be "Bet on It" by Zac Efron in High School Musical 2.
Oh, yes, yes.
Oh,
You redeemed
No.
said
everything
no.
negative you said about Newsies with that one thought.
I love that song, and every single time, if I need to clean my office, if I have to do anything, if I'm pissed off at somebody and I really just need to like let them know that I am hot shit, I put on "Bet on It" every single time, and I'm dancing too. I'm doing the dance. I don't jump on anything, but I do the dance because Zac Efron is my hero in that one scene. Not like throughout the entire series of, though I do like Zac Efron. I like Zac Efron a lot more than I used to. Ever since I've seen him in that Von Erich movie. I love him. I think he's awesome. Though he looks kind of strange. In that movie, he looks kind of strange. I don't want to make fun of him because I know it's because of his whole he had the surgery on his face, so his face looks kind of weird in that movie. Same as the other movie that he was in where he dates the chick's mom, his assistant's mom. And he looks weird in that movie too.
I have one. Basically, the Rocky theme, Eye of the Tiger, anything that's got a great beat in the Creed trilogy, those songs are great rise up songs, which like, it's not rising up against. Yes, it is.
Yeah,
So
it is,
there you go.
Sure.
That will
Okay,
always
here's one.
pump the frack out of me. Pump it up.
Here's one. What other random Disney property should have been a musical but wasn't? It's kind of hard because I feel like all of Disney movies are musicals. They're not all, but most of them I feel like they are.
I can't really think of anything off the top of my head because I got my musicals and I'm just like the dragon sitting on a horde of shiny
She said, "I've given up." She said, "I've given up on all other things."
Crazy thought. Tron. If you've heard of the Proto Man concept albums, imagine the Proto Man concept albums with Tron as a rock opera, like an electric rock opera.
Could work.
I'd be down for that.
It's hard for me because I don't like musicals like that. I guess the Parent Trap. I would say the Parent Trap. I think the Parent Trap would be
idea.
And I mean more of the Lindsay Lohan Parent Trap.
That's the only one
version.
I really know.
I had one more, but now that I thought about it, Jaylon's probably never seen any of these other movies, so it wouldn't really make any sense. But Charles, you've probably seen them, so I'm going to ask you then. But maybe if you have seen them, Jaylon, please feel free to throw it out there, though I already know what the answer will be.
I'm glad you know me.
If you had to pick one to erase forever, Newsies, Hocus Pocus, or the Parent Trap?
Oh, I actually do know all of those.
I underestimated you. I apologize.
I am going to say Newsies because I just saw it. Sorry. And I wasn't a particularly fan of it, but I do have a soft spot for Parent Trap. I saw that as a kid. That was one of the like tapes I had. I like it. And I was a big fan of Hocus Pocus long before it became this acceptable marketing trend, which is fine. I'm glad it has a stand itself, but everyone's like, I've always loved it. And I was like, where were you, man?
I'm going to say,
I'm joking. I can't get rid of those two.
You're going to get rid of Parent Trap?
I'm going to get rid of Parent Trap because I saw it and I remember it because everyone still talks about it. But if no one ever talked about it again, I wouldn't have remembered it.
Fair
But
enough.
we can all agree, not Hocus Pocus, though.
Yeah.
We will not all agree on that. I would get rid of Hocus Pocus. I would get rid of Hocus Pocus. I would pay to get rid of Hocus Pocus. I don't want Hocus Pocus to exist at all. I want it to die.
No!
I do. I hate it. I hate it so much.
It's supposed to be bad.
Here's the thing,
We
Charles.
have disagreed on so much, but I cannot accept that.
No.
Here's
Here's the thing.
Crapping
Charles,
on Gold Ring.
you and I
can
have
accept
had
you
the conversation.
crapping on Wicked. I cannot accept you crapping on that.
No. Hold on. Because you can say, I shouldn't say like, love, and hate. We have to get them in real, actual text. When I say that I hate the movie Hocus Pocus, I mean that shit. I hate that movie so much. I want it to have never been made. Ever.
Jared was traumatized.
Kill it with fire.
Movie.
Please, kill it with fire. Do it.
But it has a talking black cat.
I don't care.
So good.
So did Sabrina the Teenage Witch. And
That's
you
a
know
fair
what?
point. That is a fair point.
Listen, I would buy Hocus Pocus on DVD just to destroy it. I hate it. I hate it so much.
I didn't
And
know.
I
that
also
you-
don't like
that
Bette
you
Midler.
hated fun and
That's
decency.
I don't like Bette Midler. So
Wrap it up. We're done. We're done here. We're done. Move on. Come on. Audience
all
is done
that's
with
to
this.
say,
We're done.
thank you guys for
You're burning
listening.
everything.
Let's Talk Stories After Hours grudge match. So Jaylon is the referee. But so thank you for watching, listening and watching. I think it was a great conversation. I will also say that if I had to rate this movie, I wouldn't be I wouldn't say 2.5. I would give this movie a 3.5, actually, for me. I think
I
it,
want
because,
to, but I think that sound makes bug me too much.
yeah. I don't know. I think Jaylon made a good choice. I think she did make a good choice because I don't think it's a bad movie at all. I've seen worse movies than this. This was a great movie, and I think that if I was a child or I'd seen it as a child, I would have adored this movie. But my big adult brain was just like, no, rebel. So overall, though, fantastic. Next week, guys, we have a guest, and that guest will be here to talk about Cowboy Bebop. And so we are talking Cowboy Bebop. But thank you for listening and putting up with us because, anyway, I am 1/3 of your host. I am Jared.
I'm Jaylon.
Now I'm Spartacus.
See you next week.